Good evening. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to Greenwood High School. Those of you that are coming in, you may find your way to a seat. I want to begin by thanking you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us this evening to discuss what I truly believe is our most important responsibility as a community, and that is ensuring the safety of our students and staff. I recognize the recent events that have occurred at schools across the country have many of us on heightened alert. We too share this same concern. School safety is a community responsibility, and the purpose of tonight's forum is to engage in discussion with our school community about our current safety measures, and it's an opportunity for you to share your specific feedback in regards to our current safety measures. After a brief presentation about our general safety measures, you will have an opportunity to approach the microphone and share your question, comment, or suggestion for helping us make your child and your family feel more comfortable in our schools. Out of respect for everyone's time, there's a sign-in sheet for those of you wishing to speak. We ask at this time, if you wish to speak, if you would make your way toward the front of the auditorium. This should expedite the transition between speakers this evening. If someone speaks before you and shares a question or suggestion that is similar to yours, we ask that you defer your spot in order for an individual behind you in line an opportunity to speak. Tonight's forum will end promptly at 8 p.m. However, please know that school officials and our panel members will remain here throughout the evening if you still have a question or comment to share after 8 p.m. We are recording tonight's forum, and we are streaming live on YouTube for those that could not make it. The links can be found on both Twitter and Facebook. I respectfully request that everyone be mindful of this when you're speaking this evening. Please speak clearly into the microphone, and I ask that you help us model the very best of our wonderful school community and what it is that we expect of our children. Should you decide to speak tonight, please do not mention any specific child's name, incident, staff member, or school when sharing your comments. Any concern about a specific event, staff member, or school is best addressed by directing that inquiry to the school principal for immediate and appropriate attention. I find it important to remind everyone that we are not at liberty to disclose any information that might compromise our current safety efforts. This is why our school site-based decision-making councils go into closed session when they discuss their school's emergency plan. In addition, we cannot comment on current investigations or share anything that might violate the federal confidentiality laws. Again, as a reminder, tonight's forum may not be an optimal time to address a specific school-level concern. However, please know that all concerns are important to us, and our staff will work diligently to address all of them. I want to introduce a few individuals that will be serving on the panel with me this evening, and then we also have all of our SROs. They're seated in the audience right now in order not to interfere with the PowerPoint presentation. Our Director of Intervention Services, Mrs. Christy Bryce, has graciously agreed to serve as our moderator this evening, and so we do ask that you please take it easy on this young lady tonight for us. Our panel members for tonight's forum are J.E. Wilson, Warren County Public Schools Director of Safety, Mr. Jeff Moore, our Director of Student Support Services, our Director of Pupil Personnel. Stand up here, Jeff, so they can see. I know you like to hide. We also have with us tonight Todd Hazel, our Director of Student Support Services. We have our representative from the Warren County Sheriff's Department, Major Tommy Smith, that will be serving up front with us as well. And then our long-standing sheriff, Sheriff Peanuts Gaines, has graciously agreed to be here with us this evening. And then our county attorney, Mrs. Amy Milliken, will be with us. I do want to take this moment to reference our 5 school resource officers that we have stationed at each of our high schools. We have Deputy Mike Wadrup, Warren East High School, Deputy Chris Shelton, Lighthouse Academy, Deputy Keith White, South Warren High School, Deputy Josh Wright, Warren Central High School, and Deputy Pete Rich, Greenwood High School. Before we turn it over to audience members for dialogue about our current school safety measures and your feedback, I want to take a moment to share a brief overview of our current school safety measures. Like many of us in our community, you may be wondering, what is Warren County Schools doing to ensure the safety of our students and staff? School safety begins and ends with our school culture, and it is enhanced by our emergency procedures. Ensuring the safety of our students and staff begins with the development of a culture of respect in which adults establish positive relationships with our students and establish high expectations for student behavior at all times. It is critical for us to have school environments in which our students feel that they can confidentially report concerns. Parents need to feel this same comfort level. Our district has firm policies and protocols in place to foster positive social and emotional growth through program support and our guidance services. For example, bullying behaviors are closely monitored and students are held accountable for their actions. Family resource coordinators, counselors, school resource officers, and district mental health specialists are fully utilized to support our students' social and emotional growth. Our Leader in Me initiative has been instrumental in developing a culture of respect amongst all of our schools, one in which our students feel a sense of belonging and hope for the future. Our school culture reinforces our efforts to protect the dignity of our students while inspiring hope in each and every one of them. It's no secret that we have students who need additional support as they navigate their adolescence years. We will not turn our backs on these students in need, many of them who are our most vulnerable. Our Board of Education is committed to examining additional opportunities to provide these students with the additional support they desperately need. And I will speak about that again shortly. The next essential aspect of ensuring our students' safety falls within our emergency processes. In addition to our school culture, we spend considerable effort implementing our safety processes with fidelity. These processes are consistently monitored within district-level audits throughout the school year. Although there is always room for improvement, every effort is made to ensure that our safety measures evolve as we learn more and more about best practices in school safety. We also recognize the need to communicate better with our students to ensure they fully understand the emergency protocols and procedures that we have in place in our schools. As one can imagine, it is quite a challenge for us to communicate with our students in a developmentally appropriate manner when dealing with school safety and certainly with acts of violence, because we don't want to create additional fear and anxiety in our students nor our families. Speaking with a kindergartner looks much different than a conversation with a high school senior. Although I'm not comfortable sharing detailed information about all of our safety measures and protocols, I am comfortable sharing with you the following information. We have secured vestibule entrances at all of our schools. This was a priority for our Board of Education prior to my arrival in 2013, and we oversaw the renovations to our existing schools over the past 2 to 3 years. We have procedures in place where everyone must enter through the office and sign in according to that school's procedures. We keep our exterior doors locked at all times. We have magnetic locks to help us in the event of an emergency. We have a Knox box outside each school facility, which allows quick 24-hour access to our first responders. Many of our schools have 3M safety glass that is designed to help make the glass around the front entrance shatterproof. We have video surveillance in all of our schools. Our newest schools are equipped with the latest technology that will enable us to implement a software called Milestone, which provides immediate access to each of our schools through local law enforcement. We have strong law enforcement collaboration in this district, not just with our local sheriff's department, but also with the city police. We have morning and afternoon dismissal that is observed by numerous adults throughout our schools. As I mentioned earlier, we have a SRO, a school resource officer, located at each of our 5 high schools, the 5th being added just this past school year. We implement emergency response drills throughout the year, and we have communication radios that our administrators and leadership across the district utilize for efficient and smooth communication. We've implemented ALICE training, one of the first school districts in the state of Kentucky that focuses in on what procedures are best when an intruder infiltrates our schools. We have a program called Navigate Prepared, which is software that allows law enforcement to have immediate access to our school layouts, our crisis management plans, floor plans, and so forth. We implement a procedure called FastPath, which provides first responders faster egress through our building floor plan. And then throughout the year, we have systemic professional development for all of our staff. Best noted here lately with our emphasis on training our staff on trauma care. We work closely with the Kentucky Center for School Safety. They have been gracious over the years to come into Warren County Schools and provide us with outside audits that enable us to not only check the current procedures that we have in place, but then also make adjustments to ensure that our campus facilities are safe for our entire community. And then we have a very tight process for threat assessments. And many of you know that we, along with schools, not only across our region, but across the country, have seen a significant rise in the reporting of threats based upon these recent school incidences. Some of you in the audience may be wondering, how does Warren County Schools handle potential threats? Please know that all threats are investigated, no matter how credible, no matter how small, and we typically involve law enforcement from the very beginning in the investigation. As I mentioned earlier, we're extremely fortunate to have a close working relationship with our local law enforcement officials. Schools utilize a discipline matrix that provides school administrators a framework of guidance for firm consequences within the code of conduct approved by the Board of Education. However, judgment is used during situations involving a potential threat, because the reality is many students make comments that can be interpreted as threatening in nature. Take a look at the things that your child may post or pass on from time to time. Some students do this to create attention, albeit a very immature way of doing so. Some do it as a call for help. Nonetheless, if a threat is made within Warren County Public Schools and we're able to substantiate it, regardless of the intent, it is treated by a threat by school personnel, and the consequences are firm and swift. Warren County Schools employs 6 district mental health specialists whose goal is to remove cognitive barriers to learning. We've increased this support over the last 2 years from 4 to 6, well prior to these latest incidences. These mental health specialists have ongoing caseloads with students, as well as provide crisis services and threat assessments to ensure the safety of our students and staff. They help us determine which students pose a more serious threat to others. In addition to our mental health specialists, during the last 2 years, the district team has been working to bring trauma-informed practices into our schools. This approach is designed to recognize conditions of trauma that impact the neurological and social development of our students. Warren County Public Schools prides itself on being on the cutting edge. Unfortunately, Kentucky children have significant higher exposure to adverse childhood experiences. as compared to averages across the nation. Our students' assistance counselors, school psychologists, guidance counselors, and interventionists are all working together to infuse trauma-informed practices into our schools. Every administrator in our district and teachers in about half of our schools have already received introductory training in trauma-informed practices, and we are working to continue district-wide implementation of this approach in order to help serve the mental health needs of our students. Our staff work closely with our local mental health providers in our community when a significant concern arises. As long as that student is under the age of 18, our staff is able to access valuable information that enables us to provide ongoing support for these students when or if they return to school. WCPS has a full-time transitions coordinator that was part-time when I arrived in 2013 that oversees all students admitted or returning from mental health facilities. This individual acts as a case manager, ensuring that students are receiving the supports they desperately need. She also coordinates a meeting with our school mental health counselors who meet on a regular basis when the student returns to school. Our family resource coordinators are superstars and do a phenomenal job across the board tending to our students' daily needs. They are on the front lines every day working with students to give them a sense of belonging and self-worth. Along with our outstanding counselors, our teachers, administrators across the district are individuals that are critical in our targeted approach to address and tracking the needs of our students. Warren County Schools has a Lighthouse hotline and a Report a Bully link on the website where reports can be made anonymously about bullying behaviors. You may also access support resources in regards to harassment and bullying. This message goes immediately to the guidance counselor where it will be addressed during school hours. This is not a 24-hour reporting hotline, and anything made after hours cannot be addressed till the next morning. However, if parents feel their child needs immediate assistance, they should never wait and always call directly 911. Warren County Schools has a Helping Hearts link on the website where individuals can report mental health concerns or get information for services in Bowling Green and Warren County. Reports, again, can be made anonymously on the website by students, parents, or any community member. Before we move into your suggestions and comments, I want to take this opportunity to address some of the most common questions and myths we often hear as school officials. One that might be on the mind of many of you tonight is, why don't our schools already have metal detectors? As one can imagine, every solution presents another potential problem. It is important to recognize that there is a countermeasure to most safety procedures. If this community overwhelmingly wants metal detectors in our schools, I am fully prepared to recommend that to our Board of Education. However, it's important that our community fully understand the implementation of such a measure. This would create some challenges for our schools, our students, and yes, you parents. It might create dramatic changes in our schools, and it would lead to further debate about where do we draw the line. Do we put them at all entrances? Some of our schools have more than 20 entrances. What if an intruder approaches the detector with a weapon already drawn? Do we want our students standing in large masses waiting to pass through a metal detector at the same time each and every day? Does this actually make our students more of a soft target or less of a soft target? Do we only utilize them during the school day and not at school events? Do we screen students before they board our buses in the morning? Or do we only worry about that at our schools? Does this increase the likelihood of our buses or an after-school event becoming a prime target? Another major question, do we have the resources to properly monitor the metal detector entrances over time. We definitely have the resources today. Is the expense of the metal detector implementation worth it? Will they create a false sense of security for our students and staff? These are all questions that need to be addressed by our community before the board makes a determination of whether or not metal detectors are best for Warden County schools. The reality is there are many instances throughout our daily lives where we are vulnerable. Despite the recent attacks, schools remain a very safe place for our students. But we all know when tragedy strikes, it hits close to home for all of us. It forces us to acknowledge that violence can occur anywhere in our society, and no place is completely out of harm's way. I have 3 children, one who's still in our system, just like you. I have to trust that our staff have the adequate training necessary to ensure the safety for my own child. While the amount of training necessary is debatable, I'm confident that every staff member within our organization can tell you that our professional development training and our area of focus on safety has been and will continue to be our top priority. So you may be asking, will the board install metal detectors? Our district is in a financial position in which we can implement a variety of safety measures due to our current contingency fund, which happens to be pretty healthy at this time. Our challenge, though, moving forward, will be our ability to fund additional safety measures if they have a recurring expense. In other words, just like in your household budget, if we're paying for a reoccurring expense, we need to have a reoccurring financial cash flow to offset that. It would be irresponsible for this board or this superintendent to make a decision otherwise. Can we maintain best practices in the implementation of metal detectors? I firmly believe our best safety measures are often invisible, and many of these have a significant recurring expense. Most educational leaders will agree that we need more mental health specialists. We recently, as I mentioned earlier, added 2 in the past couple of years because they are needed to work more individually with our students who are in need. I believe we also need to consider the expansion of our SRO program to at least our middle schools. To cover this expense, however, this community would need to decide whether or not they would support this recurring expense with perhaps a penny or 2 pennies on the property tax rate. It would be irresponsible, as I mentioned earlier, for this board or myself to engage in additional expenses without that stream of funding to offset that down the road. Some of you may have been here back in late 1990s when a federal grant came in and provided school districts that chose to do so an opportunity to employ school resource officers. What you may not know is that funding stream ran dry a long time ago, and you, as local taxpayers, have been helping to fit that bill ever since. Will the district implement a clear backpack policy? For some of us, a clear backpack would certainly reveal much, if not everything that's in a backpack. If this is something our community desires, I have confidence that our board would strongly consider a policy of clear backpacks. Keep in mind that we have many students that actually receive their backpacks through us as school officials to ensure that they're on a level playing field. If we increase the number of school resource officers at each of our schools, can the sheriff department currently supply that demand? As of right now, the answer is no. We would need 19 additional SROs for those remaining schools. It would definitely take time to find enough people interested in serving in our schools as opposed to serving on the streets. I did have a meeting last week with both our county attorney, Ms. Milliken, who's here this evening, and our Commonwealth attorney, Mr. Chris Coron, and then I have met with Major Tommy Smith of the Sheriff's Department and have spoken with Peanuts Gaines, our sheriff. And what I can tell you is us as a group are committed to implementing whatever this community needs in order for them to feel safe about our schools and moving forward. Another question you may be wondering is, would we support arming our teachers? Our stance on that is pretty simple. I can only support individuals carrying firearms in our schools if they've received training that is commensurate with our local law enforcement. Responding in a crisis is much different than qualifying to carry a concealed weapon. Anyone carrying a weapon in our schools needs to be someone that we can have confidence in during a crisis situation. Unfortunately, many teachers may not be the individuals you want carrying a weapon during a crisis, and you can include me as one of those individuals. You may be wondering, why is there an increased presence of law enforcement after a threat is deemed not to be credible? This is a no-win situation for schools. If we don't ask for law enforcement presence, we deal with questions about why we wouldn't increase security just in case the threat was real, or in case we made a mistake in judgment. On the other hand, we recognize that some in our community are questioning why we have law enforcement present if we didn't deem the threat to be credible. As I said, it's a no-win situation, unfortunately, but as your superintendent, you can trust us to always err on the side of caution when it comes to school safety. Despite the fact that our transparent response typically increases anxiety for many in our community. In addition, we will continue to make every attempt to communicate with our parent community as soon as we feel confident that we have all the necessary information for dissemination. Another question you may be wondering is, does the school district lose money if students don't come to school or if student attendance is low? And the answer to that is no, because school districts across the state of Kentucky are able to drop their 5 lowest attendance days. So every district's going to have 5 low days, and it doesn't matter if it's 20% or 95%, you're taking that out of the equation for funding. Fortunately for us, our district is so large that one school's poor attendance typically does not significantly impact the overall district attendance. In fact, even over the past couple weeks, investigating a threat in pretty much every one of our schools, all 24 of them, and in some cases multiple threats, we still ran a 94% attendance and almost 95, which is roughly about 1% less than we typically do. And keep in mind, we have a number of students out with the flu and the stomach bug. We're still battling that across our community. Will schools allow students to participate in the upcoming walkouts? Some of you may have seen that, and the answer is we've already done that. We had a few students the other day that chose to walk out. I believe it's in response to perhaps the gun laws. Let it be known that they did a partial walkout. In case you didn't know, I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, but it was raining, and our kids, they didn't want to get wet, so they just did a partial walkout on that day. In fact, not only are we allowing students to do that, we just ask that they coordinate that with their school principal, because the reality is we may have some staff that want to participate. Our goal is always to work with our students to ensure that whatever activities they engage in, we can still have a productive day in terms of student learning. And lastly, you may be asking, what can the community do to help us? Please, please, do not spread misinformation on social media. And if you observe this, please don't forward these threats. This false information not only increases unnecessary anxiety on the part of our students and parents, but it actually strains our limited available resources, because we spend significant time at the school and the district level following up on any and all concerns. Let me give you just a real-world example that one principal shared with me the other day. He walked up to the principal, excuse this language, but this is how some of our kids talk, and said, "Dude, this isn't real. This is just an excuse for us to get out of school. We know tomorrow is going to be a pretty day." Now, naturally, when we deal with that, there's still consequences if someone is spreading misinformation, but at the same time, we understand that if we don't have any additional information, that's truly not a threat. Now, it's a behavior that greatly compromises our ability to educate kids. It's a significant disruption to the learning environment, but it's not a quote-unquote threat to harm of a student or a particular school. In closing, anytime you hear of something that may be a safety concern to you, please notify the school principal immediately. We need the community's help to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. Now, as we get ready to move into the portion of the presentation where you'll be able to share your feedback, just want to remind everyone that we have a sign-in sheet up front for those of you wishing to speak. If you have not already done so, please come to the front at this time. To my right there, your left, there's several seats available for you. And this will expedite the transition between speakers. In addition, if someone speaks before you and shares your question or suggestion or comment, just please defer your spot to the person behind you in order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak tonight. But again, we'll close this off at 8 p.m. out of respect for your time. But I, along with our panel members and our 5 board members who are also here, and I'm going to mention them real quick, will remain here throughout the evening. So if you have a question or something that you want to share, despite the 6:30 to 8 time frame, you'll have an opportunity to do so. With that, I do want to ask our 5 members of the Board of Education to stand just briefly. Our board chairman, Mr. Kerry Young, is here. Our board vice chairman, Mr. Gary Chaffin. Mr. Don Basham is here as well, kind of in the back there. He's trying to hide out back there. Good evening, Mr. Basham. And then the 2 lovely ladies that serve on our board, Mrs. Becky Evans and Mrs. Amy Duval. I want to personally thank our board for being here this evening. I know very little notice was able to be given for tonight's program. So with that, I think I did mention we are recording tonight's forum, so we just respectfully ask that you be mindful of this when speaking. Speak clearly into the microphone and certainly help us model the very best of our school community. And again, if you have a school-specific concern or a staff member concern, this is not the forum, but certainly we do want to address that and encourage you to contact the school directly, or you can contact me directly as well. The last thing I do want to share before we conclude this portion, I do want you to know that based on the feedback that we've received tonight, and one of our staff members, Mrs. Jan Castro, will be recording notes for us, the plan is to then take that information and then provide it back to you as a community and let you guys prioritize. I anticipate having several suggestions provided, and we're going to allow the community an opportunity to give us feedback on, okay, which of these suggestions is really what you want to see in your schools. Because once they're implemented, they're implemented. Doesn't mean you can't change and stop, but we're going to have to go through with it. And certainly sometimes with any new initiatives, there can be some growing pains. And so we want to make sure that this truly is what our community wants to see, regardless of what additional measures this board decides to implement moving forward. So with that, we're going to turn it over now to the lovely Mrs. Christy Bryce. She's going to be our moderator, and she'll, if you have questions, and she'll make sure that you get down here to the microphone. So again, thank you all for being here this evening, and at this time, panel members, if you'll come up here and join me. Thank you.
Good evening. As we begin, I will be calling down individuals. You will receive a text from me to come sit up towards the front before your time to speak. Each person's given 3 minutes, and we're all here tonight because we care about our kids, so we want to give time to those who would like to share this evening. Mr. Todd Aller, you're our first guest speaker this evening.
Superintendent, I want to say thank you for having this forum, and thanks for the law enforcement folks being here. It's very encouraging to be able to be here and know that you guys are being proactive in this. And sincerely, I'm very grateful for that. Grateful for my kids going to Warren County, and grateful to be a citizen here. I feel very blessed, and so do my kids. First of all, on the ALICE training, I've read up a little bit because I've been hearing this a lot on the news, professing how this has made a major impact. Is there anything in that training that is preemptive of a shooter, that will stop the shooter from getting in the school and begin shooting? Because it seems to me like all that training is, once a shooting begins, let's hide or protect. So is there anything in that that is designed to prevent the shooter?
That's a great question, and the question is in regard to ALICE training and whether or not there's a preemptive measure in that, or is it basically reactionary? And I could give you a great answer, but since we have our director of school safety, he would be probably disappointed if I didn't allow him to share a brief response in that area.
The ALICE training, and is my mic on?
Yeah, just put it a little closer.
Yes, the ALICE training is basically a response to an active intruder. All the physical barriers that we implement prior to, you know, whether it's the locked doors, we recommend that when we're instruction that the doors remain locked. In other words, so they're automatically in a lockdown initially before anything ever happens. But the ALICE training itself is a response to an active intruder.
Okay, so nothing there prevents the intruder. That's the
Other
issue.
than just the secure entrances we have in place, the locked doors, the protocols that our teachers are trained to do, follow on an everyday basis.
Okay. And again, I've had this discussion many times over the years with friends and this sort of thing. I think the metal detectors would be a fantastic barrier. I know it's not perfect. Nothing is. But I can't see any downside to the metal detector. To say that, would that give us false security? Does it give us false security that a deputy sheriff is here? I mean, I'm grateful they're here, but it doesn't give me false security. I understand anything can happen. So I don't think the metal detectors would give any false security at all. I think it only could prevent and not hurt. I know there's an expense to be incurred, but apparently we have the means to meet that. As far as the safety officers, I would completely support an extra tax. I'm a property owner here in Warren County. If we add a few bucks a year extra tax, I can't imagine any reasonable citizen not being okay with that. I think the question would be, would it continuously go to that program, or does it get shuffled over into some other pet project? So what I would say is, if we go that point, whatever legislature comes up guarantees that money will be always dedicated to the RSO program and never be able to move it to a general fund where it could be used for something that's not designed for originally, would be my request. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott Goodman.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate the time to talk. Please pardon my nervousness. This is something different for me. My thoughts and ideas are based on my 10 years of military service. Pardon me. I've known soldiers, one that was well qualified, well trained, and was very comfortable with his weapon. And I've known one that didn't want to touch it. And in combat, I've seen it where the one that was well trained froze, and the one that wouldn't touch it pulled it. A problem I have with guns that are coming to this school, and I think they're coming, one fashion or another, whether it's the way I appreciate it or not, remains to be seen, is who do you hand it to? What are they going to do with it? How are they going to keep it? How are they going to store it? When they go to the restroom, where's it going to be? If they break up a fight, is a kid going to get to that gun? are you going to accidentally hand a kid a gun by giving it to a teacher? Even though the teacher might be well-trained and know what they're doing, there's always going to be that one time when something goes wrong. The idea that I had between me and my wife is, and I don't want to take up too much time and draw this out. You got me there? My thoughts are, and I've been trained to aggress buildings. I've been trained to take buildings out. I've been trained to train other soldiers in this. Nervous, sorry. If you hit a fire alarm, I would like there to be a magnetic lock on every classroom door that locks. I want it to be left up to the teacher to flip a switch on the inside of that door to unlock that door and let the students leave because of the fire alarm. I'd like there to be a number of buttons within the school, big round red or orange button that either someone in the front office or the principal or vice principal could press. When this button is pressed, a tone is played over the system, maybe even a recorded voice that announces there is an incident. When this happens, the magnetic locks on all the classrooms lock. A lock that a teacher or student, if necessary, could open. But these classrooms are locked down, the students are locked in. They get away from the line of sight of that door, they get down, they wait. At the same time, I would like there to be a vault-like object built into a desk drawer that would have a series of 3 lights on it, one to show the battery is full, one to show that the door is secured, one to show it's open. When this button is hit, I want that drawer to automatically pop open about this far, and I'd like there to be an automatic in that drawer. Now this drawer is a vault. It's built into the teacher's desk. It's there. It's sealed. The principal sees a threat, hits the button, the drawer pops open. The teacher, at their discretion at this point, can say, he's down the hall, I need a gun. Fine, there's the gun. Or the teacher can think, they're shooting somewhere the other side of the school, I don't need a gun. And all they got to do is push that drawer closed, and the gun is once again secured. This is a weapon maintained within the classroom in a locked box that nobody can easily get to with a screwdriver or hammer, that will be at the teacher's disposal, but only when it's deemed necessary by somebody in the main office. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I could not read the first name, Mr. or Mrs. Osbrooks.
Good evening. I'm just going to hit on a few things that I was listening when you were talking up here, and I'm hearing a lot of money for this, money for that, tax here, tax that, how we're going to pay for it. I think that you should strongly consider the resources that you have available in this community that will be willing to come and help our law enforcement in these schools for little or no charge at all. I'm a retired veteran, 23 years of military, 3 combat tours. I'm not asking to go to the school and carry a gun myself. But when I moved here 1.5 years ago, we moved from West Virginia. West Virginia has a thing up there called the Watchdog Program, where they have fathers that come into the schools. And they're not only there to monitor the halls or whatever, or rouse kids or anything else. They're there to provide a positive role model for kids throughout that day. You see that loner walking down the hall, he becomes a mentor to that kid. But they were also empowered to handle a situation if it needed to be handled right then and there. We could assist the SROs in the schools. We can assist the SROs at the ball games and all these other school events, football games, basketball games, for little or no charge. I've got friends all over the world, veterans, just like the gentleman that spoke before me, that would be willing to do this for nothing because it's about the kids. I can't help but keep thinking about that gentleman who lost his daughter in Florida that walked into the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and there's a security guard on the elevator. Why? Why can't we have the parents? We want the community involved, right? We want the community more involved in the safety of our kids at school, am I correct? Then tap into your resources here. You can ask what ifs all day about, well, what about the school? What about metal detectors on the bus? Or what about metal detectors this? Put parents that are willing to step up and do it on the buses. That's a deterrent in itself. Put parents in the hallways of our schools that are willing to do it. There's a deterrent in itself. Active shooter drills. We have fire drills. We have tornado drills in our school. Do we have active shooter drills in the schools while the students are at the school?
Yes, sir, we do. We do have active shooter drills. It's considered part of our lockdown drills.
Okay, that's fine. I've been here a year and a half, and not one single one. I got 3 kids in 3 different schools in Warren County, and they have not participated in one active shooter drill since I've been here.
Sir, they're part of their lockdown drills, and that's part of their training that teachers are starting to go over with them.
Okay. And the last thing I just want to say real quick is if you support the walkout of students and teachers, school is a place for learning and teaching. It is not a place to go in there and put out your beliefs or whatever it is you have about this. I strongly recommend, and I strongly would like to suggest that you shoot this down. Kids that walk out of school and protest, suspended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christy, real quick, and this body up here is designed to listen, but if you don't mind, there's a couple things that I want to just clarify. If you'll recall back when I was sharing my opening comments, it has become evident to me that in some cases these procedures that we're implementing with our kids, because of what maybe we're not being real clear about, there is a disconnect, and that's why I made it hopefully very clear that that's an area for improvement for us as a school district. It's making it very clear that this is a school intruder drill and not just lockdown. And the reason, I think, in some cases, we've got some staff that don't want to alarm kids, but obviously, as you can see with the number of folks in here, we're well past that. So that is a learning opportunity for us as a district. And then in terms of the walkout, I will tell you, and gave this considerable thought, I don't make decisions based on what I personally want to do as superintendent of Warren County Schools, and hopefully you can respect that, because personally, I'm with you, and more so, okay? But as a representative of the school district, it's my job to help guide us in making decisions that are going to be best for all parties together. And I will tell you that this is such a sensitive area for many in our community that I'm confident that had we not worked with our students in regards to this, we'd be dealing with a lot less learning that's occurring in those schools. And I know our principals are here, and I'm confident that they would affirm that if we want to do what's best to keep that a learning environment in that school, it's best that we work with them. It's no different than a 20-minute lunch. There's not a lot of learning going on there. And I have total confidence that whatever 17 minutes, 15 minutes that's lost in that day, that our staff are more than equipped to ensure that there's no loss of learning. But I do appreciate your comment, and personally, I agree with you.
Mr. Eddie Eccles.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to mention, this gentleman very clearly, pretty much word for word, had my thoughts. So I've just got a couple of questions about the helping home. It's good to hear mental illness being talked about and being concerned about. My question is, when you have a child or a student that their mental problems are severe enough where they need psychotropic drugs, are they thoroughly investigated and watched? For example, the shooter in Florida, he was on, I believe it was Zoloft and Lexapro, and the FBI, the local police were called over and over. He was arrested, which him being able to buy the gun was the fault of the FBI because they weren't doing their job. But if he had been investigated and looked into further, it could have possibly been stopped through disciplinary action or some other means to where they say, okay, this guy's taking a drug that one of the side effects, it makes you, either suicidal or homicidal, then maybe they need to be taken out until they're under better control. So I'm just wondering, what are y'all's protocols for investigating mental illness and being put on these drugs?
Well, we don't have a protocol for investigating mental illness. We do have a protocol for investigating behavioral incidences or areas of concern. And in terms of the information in regards to medical information that you're referencing there, that information is only shared on a need-to-know basis. There are federal laws that guide schools in what information they may or may not disseminate. And when it comes to children's medication, that is not something that is freely shared amongst staff. However, if there is a need to know, then we may share that. And so I guess big picture with 16,000 students, one of them my own, they're on all kinds of medications. And,
right.
And certainly we're not in the business of trying to determine which medications may or may not lead a student to a violent act. I think that's about the best I can do to respond to that.
Okay, and also, what would, would it be worth looking into maybe having volunteers? I know me and my wife would be more than willing, or at no charge at all, to spend a day or two a week at a school, like he was saying, to help out the law enforcement in case the need arose.
We're always in the area of wanting additional volunteers. Now, volunteers crossing over into perhaps a law enforcement situation, there are liability issues that would prohibit, I think, much of maybe what you're referencing there. Keep in mind that there's a lot of information that school districts must entertain before they make a certain decision, and something as simple, or not as simple, as significant as we're talking about with individuals carrying firearms, there are liability issues that would need to be kind of examined and so forth. But I think big picture, we have a number of visitors that come into our buildings to work with our kids on a daily basis. We're highly dependent upon them, whether it be our foster grandchildren, grandparents, and so forth. So certainly we'd love to have more involvement in our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Dave Peterson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having this forum, everybody that came out tonight, all the parents, those that were concerned, superintendent, all law enforcement, and educators. I, too, am a veteran, like so many others that are here tonight. I served for 22 years. I have 6 combat tours, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. I fought in big open wars like Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where there's a standoff distance. I did 5 tours in Iraq where everything was closed. I don't believe that we need any guns in here except for those that are in law enforcement. Things get real hairy real fast. And I might be going out on a limb here. There may be a few, but I doubt there are a few. There aren't too many more people here in Warren County that have fired or been fired at in real close quarters than myself. There might be some, but I doubt there are too many. I believe that with stuff like the Barracuda system, which you can lock down doors within a minute, we can put those in every classroom for every teacher. I've looked at the prices. I know how much it costs. Bulletproof whiteboards that you can slam right on top of a door. You can lock it down. There are things that we can do instead of wrapping concertina wire and sandbags outside that can minimize and make our classrooms safe. And within a minute and a half, as soon as the alarm's done, you have an impenetrable classroom. It's easy to do. Anybody from 8 years old to 80 can do it, but it costs money. Superintendent, you said something tonight that impressed me very much. You said it would be irresponsible for me to do this with funding. I appreciate that. I understand that. I am willing not to patrol the hallways of the school because I would get in trouble. I guarantee that. That's not my job. I did that for 22 years. But I can promise you this. I'll tell you what I am willing to do for the rest of my life, because I'm retired. I got nothing but time. I'm willing. There's 122,000 people in Warren County. 90,000 of them are over 18. 50,000 of them are employed. 18,000 of them are retired. They got money. There are 2,981 businesses here in Warren County that take people for money that live here in Warren County, that have families and kids. There are 79 places of worship. 75 of them are churches, 3 of them are mosques, and 1 is a temple. All those people say they love God. It'd be irresponsible for me not to go and knock on their doors. See, I ain't got no pride. It don't bother me at all to ask for money for children. I'm a Shriner. I do it all the time. I ask for children to fund hospitals. I got children that go, I understand what it's like to be shot at in close quarters. And I know what it's like to shoot at in close quarters. I know what it's like to patch up somebody when they've been shot. I know all those things. And the last thing I want to do is be in your schools with a gun trying to be a sheriff. I'm not a sheriff. Guess what you're not? You're not a veteran of Iraq 6 times over. That's an apple. This is an orange. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not knocking anybody that suggested. I'm just saying I don't want nothing to do with it. There are non-ballistic methods that anybody can lock down a school, every classroom. Let me tell you, if we've got 5,000 doors, if we got 3,000 doors in schools, 3,000 classrooms in Warren County, we've got 28 schools, yes, sir?
Roughly 27. But
27.
what you want to call
But
it.
one's being made. Is that true?
That's right.
Okay. Well, that one that's being made, we'll go ahead and say that there's 3,000 classrooms. We'll just estimate. Okay? It would cost $500,000 to put a Barracuda system, top, bottom, and middle, in all of them. $500,000. For the bulletproof whiteboards that you could put on doors, it would cost $670,000. That's just $1 million. I already told you how many people are here, okay? If everybody gave $1 a week, like they do for coffee, we'd have this thing paid for in no time. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm coming to your office, sir. I'm coming to your office, ma'am. I'm coming to your office. I'm gonna give the PTOs. I know how to set up a 501c3. I know how to do a nonprofit. I'll talk to everybody in the PTO. I got nothing but time, and I got a lot of energy. And I'm most persistent.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm the most persistent person that you'll ever meet. I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I'm not into politics. I don't care about politics. Never have. But I'm really into America. I'm really into people. I'm going to shut my mouth in a minute. I know you're looking at me.
No, we have less.
But I'm here to tell you, I'm coming to your office, sir. I sure am. I'm going to talk to all you people here. I've taken all your good names. I'm going to look you up. And I'm going to ask you for some money as an individual citizen.
All right, we appreciate your time, sir.
One last thing, ma'am. Government and private citizens, if they work together, we can come up with the solutions. Not private citizens by themselves, not government by themselves. I will shut up. I apologize.
Thank you. We appreciate your passion. Mr. Jeffrey Frank.
Boy, I was hoping not to go next after you. All right, I'm going to have to lower this for a second. I'm just going to quickly start and read off a tweet by the handle Vote Vets. I guess he's a veteran. Arming teachers may sound good, but it is a terrible idea. Many problems, but just some include. It increases the chance of kids dying in crossfire, adds to confusion with SWAT teams trying to identify an armed assailant, and greatly increases odds of an accidental shooting. So after that, let me just get to a couple of points. My family and I have been here for about 6 months, coming from Ohio and a few other states before that. In the school that we were in before, all doors are locked, and if someone wants to go in, they have to ring a buzzer, and a school attendant, I guess, would ask, he or she what they want, and then be let in. I don't know if that's the case with all the schools around here, but I think that's a good deterrent to start with. Second off, and I guess to end it, Mr. Clayton, I applaud you and commend you for everything you have stated so far, and to not have discipline that want to participate in the walkouts on March 14th and April 20th. You mentioned that it's okay for them to do so. What if a parent wants to participate? What would happen? What would be the procedure for that?
That would be best answered at the school level, but my understanding would be they would just need to follow their council policy in regards to visitors. And so we have volunteers in our schools all the time, so I would imagine that they could potentially participate, but again, that would be within the guidelines of each individual school.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Heather Ryan.
I have 3 children that attend Warren County schools, and my children come home scared every night. And all of these are all great suggestions, but what are we going to do, and what does this timeline look like to implement any of these ideas? Because my children are asking to stay home because they don't know what to do if an active shooter comes in. I work for the Salvation Army. I understand the threats and the safety and all of those things, but as a parent, that's my concern as well. And instead of talking about their education and what homework they have to do that night, they're asking, Mom, what should I do if somebody comes in with a gun? To me, I would do it all. I would put in the metal detectors, the clear backpacks, the locks on the doors, utilize the parents. We have to do whatever we can to protect our children. I don't care if it takes every penny that we have. That is our job as parents, to protect our children. That's the bottom line. And I don't think that I think all these ideas are great, but we have veterans that have served our country. If they served our country, then why can't they serve our schools? These are all just suggestions that I have, but I'm concerned. I'm about action being taken. I don't want to stand here and talk about a form. I want to know how long is it going to take us and the Board of Education to come up with a plan and to implement it to protect our children so my kids aren't afraid to walk through those doors every day.
I think the best way to address your question is to keep a couple things in mind. Number one, we have planned for security breaches from day one since I've been here, and I can assure you the previous leadership did the same. When it comes to additional safety measures, I don't think it would be responsible to implement any procedure without first weighing in from our community. And so this is step one. I wish I had a more definitive answer for you, but really tonight is the first opportunity for us to kind of gauge what are the things that are out there in our community. We read the social media, we see what's in the news. But here's what I can promise you, is this board, along with district level leadership and our school level leadership, will proceed through this process as expeditiously as possible, but certainly it would take some time. Now, it pains me to think that you have children that do not want to go to our schools because of safety issues. I can tell you the majority of students are not in that situation. They're getting up and going just like my own. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have a concern. I've had concerns for my child's safety each and every day well prior to these events. I will still tell you that I think the most dangerous part of our children's day, especially our teenagers, is when they get behind that wheel and they drive to and from school. And the reality is nobody in this community is doing a whole lot to make that a safer trip, right? So it's keeping things in perspective. Our schools still remain a very safe place for our students. And I can assure you the most important thing that we can be doing, we've been doing, and that is creating a culture in which our students feel a sense of belonging, they feel a sense of hope, because we do know the characteristics of individuals who create harm on others, especially those that are 18 years and younger. What we have to do a better job, okay, and it's a continuously challenge for us as a district, is identifying those students and then providing those supports along the way. And those are fully implemented, albeit we can still improve.
Okay. I just, as a parent, I would like more communication with the Board of Education, to know where these steps are, to know what plans are being implemented, so we can work together all along the way and just not be surprised when our children come home and say things directly to us. We've already had that communication with the board.
Right. And I will tell you, really what you're saying is at your school level.
Right.
Because I love these 5 board members to death, but their decision-making piece is not in the day-to-day, and really what we're talking about is day-to-day operations, which certainly falls under the responsibility of the superintendent. But our administrators, and they're scattered throughout here, they know that there's significant responsibility on their shoulders as the building level leader. I will tell you as a parent, I'm most concerned about the leadership that's happening at my school, at the school level with my child, than I ever am with these board members or even me as superintendent. And we'll continue to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dallas Scoble. If you would use that mic, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having this. I think I would just, first of all, like to say, pretty much echoing what I've heard pretty consistently, that if any funding is needed for any of these measures, I mean, I would be, fully willing to pay more taxes for it. I don't think we should, penny pinch on something like this, security measures. And I'm a low tax kind of guy too, so.
Me too.
But anything I think should be on the table. Metal detectors. I think probably from what I gather, the most controversial may be having teachers who carry weapons. My assumption, though, is if something like that would be implemented, they'd be fully trained to a level that a sheriff's department would be comfortable with. But that also would cost money. I would pay taxes for something like that. I did have a question just in regard to, there seems to be, my daughter just started kindergarten last year at a Warren County school, and there seems to be some days where they're like special event days. It's kind of open for parents just to, come in, maybe have lunch with the kids, and it seems like the protocols are different on those days. So sometimes, doors are just like kind of wide open, and a bunch of parents are, coming in, but it just seems like anybody could just come in on those days. So my question was, are there, for like these special events, certain protocols that are in place or that are going to be improved upon to secure those kind of days?
Those protocols are developed and established at the school level. I trust that they would be similar across the board with the amount of collaboration that we do as a school district. But I will tell you, as a building level leader for 7 years at a middle school, when we had those parent events, it was a challenge for me to balance ensuring the safety of our students and then dealing with parents who felt like we're going above and beyond in creating barriers for them to come into our building. But the sign-in procedure should still be in place. And so if that is not occurring, I encourage you to speak directly with the school and share your concerns. You can certainly let me know. I appreciate you not mentioning it here and out in the public. But I will tell you that we make mistakes. We deal with human error all the time. That being said, we have some of the most professional, highly trained individuals working with our kids. I couldn't be more pleased. But again, we know that in some cases there may be some lapses, and certainly we want to address those. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Thank you.
Mr. Brent Hightower.
Thank you all so much for everything you all do. I was talking to both of my daughters, which both attend a school here in Warren County last week, and I'd asked them if there was an incident that they overheard another student mention, how would they report that? It was varying. One daughter told me they would go to a teacher. One told me they would go to a guidance counselor. I asked some kids at my school, or at church, the second it was varied between those individuals. I would suggest, and I think it's great on your all's website, you have the bullying button that you can click on, and you can report bullying that needs to be dealt with. But I worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office for 5 years. I worked as the DOSM there, the District Officer Security Manager. We had implementation of see something, say something, report something, and anonymously as well. I would suggest that on your all's website you have a big button that individuals can go to, students can go to, and report something, and come up with a format of where that's going to go to. Somebody in the administration, I'm not talking about law enforcement initially, I'm talking about somebody within the school board administration needs to look at it and decide whether the counselor, the principal, or if they need to talk to the parents or get in touch with law enforcement. But I believe that needs to be part of it. The other part of it is training. You've got to train students where they're supposed to go, because none of these children that I talked to knew where to go to report something. And most of these incidents that do take place, these kids aren't on an island. They have said something to somebody, they've made mention, they've gotten angry, they've made threats. And I think if we can report it prior to the incident taking place, we would save ourselves a lot of distress from that. So that's just one suggestion I have. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Lee Baldock.
Hello, good evening. Thank you all so much for having this. I have a kindergartner, so this is the very first experience I have with public school, and I love it so far. Of course, safety is a huge concern for all of us. That's why we're here. I come from a military and law enforcement family. My father served 34 years in the military and currently works with the FBI here in Bowling Green. So he has helped consult me on some of my questions. First, do the teachers practice with a simulation of gunfire in these drills? They do. Okay, awesome. Okay, and how often do they do these live fire or simulation drills for the intruders?
Go ahead.
What happens on our ALICE training, and they do use simulations with the teachers in the classrooms, inside the school, where they can get acclimated to that climate, is we do that periodically through schools. Currently, we have 2 scheduled inter-schools, and what we do is share that information throughout the district. So if we have teachers that want to come from another school, they can go ahead and do that. So we have ongoing training continuous throughout the year. We do have a new teacher orientation every year to get them aware of the concept and what ALICE is. So it's an ongoing training continuously.
So the trainings are twice a year with the simulation, is that what?
No, they're ongoing.
Ongoing.
Right now we have two scheduled currently
Okay.
for that, but it's ongoing, and each principal can call in, request it, and through the Sheriff's Department, Deputy Mike Waldrop over here to my right, he's actually an ALICE instructor. Him, along with Deputy Chris Shelton, they do the shooter training for them.
Okay. Are there no plans to have SROs at elementary schools as well? Is it just a lack of staff?
Right now, as I mentioned earlier, it is under consideration. Okay. Personally, I think most of us would love to see an SRO in each school, and really it just comes down to it comes down to determining, is this something the community wants to see? There are folks, and certainly these past events can change people's minds, but there are some in our community that would say not at the elementary level, in fear, and everybody has their own opinions.
Right.
But certainly our goal is to implement whatever we feel, you feel as a community is best for our school community.
Well, I support it at every level. I mean, you look at Sandy Hook, and I think it needs to be everywhere. They need to be armed with rifles, very accessible, not in their trunks. Because the accuracy of a handgun down a long haul is not what a rifle is. So I support rifles and SROs in every school. What are the safety protocols for field trips for going off campus? I just got a permission slip, and that kind of freaked me out. So I didn't know if there's any safety protocols for leaving the school with the children.
Specifically as in?
going on field trips. I mean, is there anything in place if there was any kind of incident out in the community?
In terms of a shooting incident?
Right, or any kind of safety incident?
Well, that would be best answered at each particular school, because then it comes down to
Gotcha.
who's taking them on the field trip.
Okay.
So that's an interesting question that I don't know that I could speak definitively
Okay.
upon all of our schools, but just in general sense, obviously our protocol is pretty much mirrored, whether it's in the classroom, outside the classroom, or outside the school day. We have recess going on
Right.
at all times, and the reality, there's a lot there when you think about a free, open society like our
Right.
country.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Cleveland.
A lot of people have said a lot tonight, and I'm a alumni of one of your schools, and I've got kids in 2 different schools and other families in the schools here, and I think right now, until something can be implemented, I think we should give our veterans a chance to go ahead and start working with the sheriff's office and the schools to help protect our children for now until you can get something in place permanently.
Okay, thank you. My only response to that is, unfortunately, we can't just make an executive decision such as that when we're responsible for whatever measures we do implement.
Okay, you
Certainly
can't
do
make an
appreciate-
executive decision, but our kids are in danger every day of going to school. I've got one of my kids that's scared to death to go to school. He wants a bulletproof vest just to go to school. Schools are supposed to be the safest place to go. I think an executive decision can be made on this if you're willing to do it.
I'll certainly respect your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen McKitty.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us, the community, a chance to speak to you all tonight. I'm an advocate for volunteering in school, particularly among parents and other community members that would like to take part in that. I know there's been some sentiments addressed tonight from other adults saying that we don't want to put the burden on our children to be the ones to have to speak out about these things. So we as adults, as parents, and as community members, I feel like that we should shoulder more of this responsibility and start to step up and volunteer in schools. So my question to you all is, what do you feel is the most important thing we as parents can do to assist safety initiatives in school? And would you consider extending volunteer training for parents or other community members who want to perform certain roles in school, such as, I know this gentleman talked about the Watchdog program. I've seen that program in action in one of the schools here in Warren County, and I was very impressed with the outcomes of that program and the people that were willing to participate. So what I'm asking is, would you consider extending more volunteer opportunities and training for parents that are willing to come into schools and take part in safety initiatives?
The quick response to that is we're always willing to extend a welcoming hand, if you will, to our parents in our community and community members, and we love the idea of them coming in and volunteering and helping us. So certainly is something that we would be very appreciative of. And then the first part of that was, you had something prior to that, correct?
Oh, have a note come back up. What do you feel is the most important thing that we as parents can do?
Yeah, I think
right now?
I can speak on behalf of all district level leadership and staff. First and foremost, reassure your child that, and the statistics verify this, that school is one of the safest parts of their day, far safer than going to to a movie, for example, where there's nobody looking out for their supervision in some cases. But and then certainly anytime there's a concern, no matter how small, please let us know. Don't put it on social media and let that kind of blow up, but just make a quick phone call to any adult. That's what we communicate to our students. Would we love for them to go straight to the principal? Absolutely. But we know that some kids, that's not going to be most comfortable for them. So what we communicate is any adult. Let an adult know they're all trained to take that information and make sure it gets into the right hands. But those are the two things that I know have been good for me as a parent, and I would encourage you to do the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Grant.
Good evening. This is really nerve-wracking. I do want to say that all the ideas that they had brought to everybody's attention is really a good idea, but it does make me wonder about the metal detector thing. Everybody says we don't have money for funding, but we can do fundraisers for band trips, and we can do fundraisers to get more instruments or soccer balls, and I'm pretty sure we're all able to do fundraisers too to be able to make our school a little bit safer. I mean, you look at Florida, how did they get the guns in the school to begin with? If they have some kind of protection at the door, it's not going to happen. I mean, it'll keep the kids safe. Lockdowns are great to have. I've been in Kentucky for 15. When I went to my school up in Illinois, I mean, there was kids with cigarettes in their ears, and they were dressing like prostitutes. I think this school's a lot safer since I've been here. I mean, it's been a while since I've been in the school, and I still don't really see much metal detectors, but I do notice that the front office has been closed in, which I think is a little bit better. I like with Natcher, that's where my son goes, you have to be buzzed in to get through the front doors. And even if we've got stuff going on for like Thanksgiving dinners, I go every 3 months for meetings for my child. I still get carded, and they know who I am. I mean, they still want to know, who are you? Let me see your ID before they even buzz you through the doors. And that makes me feel a little aggravated at times because I know there's other mothers just walking through the doors, and obviously I look a little bit different than your typical Girl Scout mom, but it makes me feel a little bit better to know that they're gonna, I wanna know who you are. I wanna know what you're doing here and how long you're gonna be here for. I do like the fact that they have the direct line to the sheriff's department, but it only takes seconds for things to go wrong. How far is the sheriff's department from this school? How long is it gonna take them to get here? How many kids are gonna die before they get here to save everybody? I mean, we gotta do something to prevent that from coming through the front door. I'm willing to help with fundraisers to help bring metal detectors in, and I'm sure there's people, if you were to put out a statewide ad, hey, I'm looking for sheriffs to help watch the kids. I mean, in Arkansas, March 24th, 98, 4 kids got killed, 1 teacher got killed. That was outside the school. The kids walked to school. They shot them outside the schools. They pulled the fire alarms, they had everybody come outside, and look what happens. I mean, even if we're not watching inside the schools, we gotta watch all around the schools. And veterans, that's a good idea. Everything that everybody said is a great idea. I just think we need to be just a little careful on everything. We need to just watch a little bit. And those kids were only 11 years old. High schools, it's great to have the sheriffs watching everything, but I think elementary schools and junior highs, they're selling plastic guns at school, and if any 4-year-old can pick it up and know that that's a weapon, I think every school needs to be monitored, just by maybe a sheriff or somebody else watching the door, seeing who's coming in and out to watch our children. I mean, those were just little kids that did it, and they served until they were 18, and then they got out at 21, and they're out today. Then they even asked, what would you have done to they were able to communicate with the teachers, with the substitutes and everything. They had counselors when I went to school here, which was great. I just think communication, especially with the parents and the emails, don't be vague, be blunt. As much as it scares us, we need to know everything, not just parts of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tabitha Trowbridge. Tabitha Trowbridge. We'll move on to the next one. Jane Hamlet.
Hi, I thank you all for having us tonight. I know in several of the local communities here in the state and elsewhere in the U.S. have experienced some of the threats that we have seen in Warren County in the past week. I do know that some of those states and some of those municipalities here in Kentucky have pressed charges against these children that have, threatened their other students in their school as far as gun violence or bomb threats. My question is, why is our community not doing the same thing? They're kids. If there is a repercussion to their action, and the parents know that they could be charged with something, or they can be expelled from school, it may stop some of it. You can't go into an airport and say the word bomb. You're going to get pulled over to the side and charged with terroristic threatening. If there's not some penalty for their actions, we're going to continue to see this. And it may stop some of the ones that, really aren't intending to do anything, that are wanting attention. So I just wanted to see if you guys had even talked about any of this, what the possibility is of enforcing some type of legislation or just local action.
There's a couple things, and I'll let our county attorney, I think she's chomping at the bit.
I know.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
not saying a thing.
And you've done well. The notion that students aren't charged for terroristic threatening is a misnomer. I don't have the statistics in front of me, and of course, it's not something that we really want to boast either, but the reality is we've charged students on numerous occasions in the 5 years since I've been here for terroristic threatening and for bullying and harassment. So please know that that is not a situation in which we don't take that seriously. You may be referencing there are some situations where actually there's no threat that's been made. All right? Doesn't mean the student didn't do something inappropriate, doesn't mean that the student is exhibiting questionable behavior, but in terms of a threat, we do have to investigate that and substantiate that. And so there's some cases where what was spread, I know one that's very vivid, that was spread over social media and people thinking that there's a threat when the reality is there was no threat made. And our county attorney here will explain to you. And you need to know this. There's two different situations here in terms of what the courts can do and what schools can do. And so the burden of proof is much higher in a court of law than it is at the school level. So in some cases, even though it may not rise to the level of a crime, that doesn't mean that we can't discipline these students with severe consequences. I got 5 board members in here, and they'll all nod in favor that they have expelled students for threatening behavior. Now notice what I just said, for threatening behavior, not for carrying out a threat. And so I can assure you that these things are taken seriously, and if there's enough information there, we're going to hold them accountable to a high standard.
And I'll just follow up and say, first of all, he stole my thunder, number one.
Sorry.
I was going to tell the exact same thing. But number 2, I do want you to know we work very, very closely together. So when there is even a possible threat, we're made aware. So the sheriff's office lets me know. Superintendent Clayton is on top of it. We are all collaborating together with the Commonwealth Attorney. So we're all working together. And many times I'll tell you, the children have been charged, you just don't know about it because they are not charged as an adult. They're charged as a juvenile, and when they're charged as a juvenile, you will not hear anything about it. And that can be frustrating. I understand. I hear you. But under the laws right now, you will not know about it. Only if they're charged as an adult.
Amy, is there any way that you could get some information out to parents? Or, just as a parent, I had no idea that these kids had been charged or something was going on with them. If parents are aware of that and you can relay that to the student population, it may actually help reduce some of it.
We have to be really careful in the information that we do put out there because you can single out a student, and we're not allowed to do that. As frustrating as that may be, I know, our kids are about the same age, and I know my daughter sits in a classroom with someone that I know too much about, and it bothers me. And to the parent who said, my children are afraid at night, just encourage them that the school is there to protect them. I know I have children too, and every day before my 16-year-old gets out of the car with me, I say to her, be diligent, be aware of your surroundings, but school is the safest place for you. That's where you're learning to build your future. And so she knows. And when parents call me and say, oh, there was a threat, are you sending your child to school? Yes, I'm sending my child to school. I talk to them. I have more than one. I have 3. Yes, I'm sending them to school because school is the safest place for them. And I do know, I promise you I wouldn't send my kids to school if I thought there was a problem. And I'm going to tell you, the people on this panel, the people who are in the schools, the administrators, the principals, they work diligently every day to protect these kids. And they also work diligently every day to hold the kids accountable. So it's not, and if they think I can't prosecute them, they take administrative action. I don't point my finger at you. I'm like, I'm talking about children. But it's true. And I want you to feel that way. And I want you to know that we work together to do everything we can to keep the kids safe. And that doesn't mean we can't be better. So I love some of these ideas. I didn't know about the Watchdog program. I'm glad you said that. I made a note. I'm going to look into it. So I love hearing the feedback because I think that makes all of us better. I hope that answers.
One last thing. Yeah. I appreciate that, Amy. It's good to know. One last thing. I am a small business owner.
Yes.
I'm one of the founding board members for Safe Spots that's implemented in all the schools in the local community. I will say, the veteran that was here that had the Purple Heart, what he was talking about, I would be on board as a business owner, and I'm sure they're pretty much every other one in the community. When it comes to protecting our kids, we would be more than willing to step up and help.
Thank you, Ms. Hamlet.
No, and that's
Okay, at this time it is 8 p.m., but as I promised earlier, we have our panel members here that will stick around, and we'll stick around to the wee hours of the night. We don't sleep much anyway. But for those of you that have other obligations, we're going to take just 2 minutes here. You can make your way out. We know that that can be a little bit disturbing. Thank you all for being here this evening, and look forward to working